Hello and welcome to C++ Weekly. I'm your host Jason Turner. Once a week I pick some topic of interest in C++ and dig into it with some live coding. In this episode, I'm continuing this series on new features in C++ 17 by discussing the new has include feature. So if you do any kind of cross-platform development or header-only libraries or that kind of thing, you probably have found yourself doing some level of code to detect what compiler and operating system you're running on. Take, for example, this code that attempts to detect if we're running on Unix or a Unix-like operating system, and if we are, we want to include standard Unix headers. And then continuing this, if we manage to properly include a Unix header, then we want to include the header file for dlopen and other dynamic library functions. But we need to be careful to not include header files when we're on Cygwin for Unix operating systems, even though Cygwin does implement some of the POSIX functions. And then potentially, if we are running on Windows, then we want to include our Windows header files. And this code comes from ChiScript, kind of. It's been modified a little bit. But the entire point here is that I'm trying to figure out which version of my dynamic library loading functions I should be able to use. So in here, I can use dlopen. And in here, I can use the Windows load library function. And I'm going to put it in a dummy main. So we're going to be using Cling 3.8 today. In C++ 1Z mode, and we're going to correct our typo. As usual, it happens. So we don't get any output here, which we wouldn't really expect to, but to prove to ourselves that we're actually including all of the headers that we think that we are, we're going to put in a pragma here. To say that we have done something that is POSIX-ish. And we can see that we get the pragma message as expected. So what C++ 17 now gives us is the ability to ask the compiler if it is possible for it to properly include an individual header file. And we can do that like this. Quite simply, if we have access to the Unix standard header file, then include it. And we can do the same thing here. And the same thing in Windows land. And for the sake of this example, this actually simplifies things an extra level, because really here all I needed to know was dlopen, and I was using the ability to include Unix headers, which set the POSIX version so that I knew if it's POSIX, then I can include dlfcn, and instead I can just remove this because really I just care if the dlfcn.h header file exists, and if it does, then I want to use it. And we can continue to compile and see that we're still getting our is POSIX-y message. Now I hope in my own code to be able to use this to clean up a lot of magic around pound defines and in cross-platform code and detecting operating systems specifically. But you could also use it for things like if readline is available. But that gets a little tricky because readline is going to include also needing the ability to link a library. So, but you could use it for other things, like if you want to have special behavior in the presence of boost. You could do some interesting things there. I don't know if there's a top-level boost at HPP, but you get the idea. So header-only libraries, detecting user configurations, detecting operating systems, I think this will definitely clean up some stuff. Be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and check out any of the links below.